Which misconception would you like to debunk? Story 1. Touching a baby bird is not going to cause its mother to abandon it. An old wives' tale designed to stop kids messing with young chicks has now caused a generation of people to pass on this old belief without ever being corrected. Yes, if you see a baby bird on the ground, chances are its mother kicked it out to teach it to fly or something, but if you need to cut the grass or mow the lawn, you can lift it and put it back in its nest. Its mother isn't going to abandon it just because you touched it. That's like thinking a human mother would abandon a baby because a cat rubbed its butt on it. It's kind of crazy how we have access to all this info now, but some folks still believe in those old wives' tales about baby birds. Like, seriously? It just shows that not everyone has the same access to knowledge, and that we need to do a better job of educating people about how animals really work. But you gotta hand it to those old myths. They can really stick in our brains and shape our ideas. That's why it's so important to question what we hear and fact-check our beliefs. With a little bit of critical thinking, we can appreciate nature for what it really is, and not just what we think it should be. Story 2. I work at a store that sells work boots with safety toes. Please don't propagate the myth that you need to go a size up to make space for the toe. You want that thing as snug as possible, without your toes touching the safety toe. Loose means you move and your toes will bump up against the safety toe. Y'all are the reason my customers have messed up toes. Mind your business. The reality is, if your boots are too big, your toes will slide around inside and end up colliding with the safety toe. That's not only uncomfortable, but can also lead to serious foot injuries. It's crucial to get the right size and fit for your boots, so you can stay safe and comfortable on the job. Story 3. There is no skip all the floors button combination on any elevator you're going to be in, and even if there is one, there's no way you'll find it. I'm an elevator lover and I have family in the elevator repair business, so I've spent a lot of time listening to elevator stories and doing my own research. All those pictures and posts about how if you hold the button and close the door button, you skip the calls are all lies, especially the ones that say it's for emergency services. Emergency services that would realistically need this kind of control over an elevator have keys to turn the elevator into fire mode, which does indeed skip all floor calls. If a building owner wanted an elevator to be able to ignore calls without fire emergency operation mode, there's another way, called independent service mode, sometimes called operator service, like old-time elevator operator who sat in the elevator and drove it all day. Independent service is also usually key activated, though it could be activated through a button at the front desk, on a computer, or in the controller room at the top of the shaft manually. In 30 years of elevator installation and repair, my uncle says he has never once seen an elevator that had a button combination set up to do anything like that without first inserting an operator's key. The only exception being in hospitals' freight elevators, which usually have a code blue button on the inside panel and outside call buttons, but those are usually employees' access only, and there is an understanding in the hospital that you don't just hit that button for no reason. Story 4. A proposal to make German the official language of the United States of America was defeated in Congress by one vote. It's easily debunked by common sense. Seriously, why would they do this? And congressional records? The myth likely comes from the fact that a proposal to adjourn and discuss at a later time a petition to have laws translated to German for German-speaking residents was defeated by one vote. Story 5. You can file a missing persons report as soon as the person goes missing. No need to wait 24 hours or whatever. As soon as a person goes missing should be noted as soon as you think something might be wrong. Story 6. The teddy bear was named for a bear that Theodore Roosevelt spared on a hunting trip. However, he didn't exactly spare it, and it wasn't exactly out of mercy. There was a professional trapper, tracker/hunter dude with him, whose job was to find a bear for him to kill. However, the bear he found was so pathetic looking that Roosevelt just didn't think it was worth his effort. The trapper dude just cut its neck open instead. Story 7. The boiling frog experiment that's quoted everywhere didn't work. For those not familiar, it is said that you can boil a frog to death by raising the temperature of the water it's in extremely slowly so that it doesn't notice. Well, it only works when parts of the frog's brain are removed. A frog with an intact brain will jump out, no matter how slowly the water is heated. I don't remember who it was, but there was a comedian on a panel show who said that the first time his parents cooked a lobster, they thought it would be more humane to put the lobster in cold water, then bring it to a boil gradually. Cue about 10 minutes of a lobster going ballistic until finally dying, plus emotional scarring for everyone involved. Story 8. My room and car being a mess doesn't prove I don't have OCD. In fact, if I didn't have it, it'd be easier to get things like cleaning done. I have OCD, and I won't clean my room or car often because touching a bunch of potentially dirty or dusty objects really aggravates my hand-washing compulsions. I will usually reach a breaking point after many months of buildup and spend a day doing nothing but cleaning things and washing my hands raw. Story 9. There isn't a dead body being transported on all or most commercial airlines. Seriously, what airline or airport has all these corpses going back and forth? I work the ramp at O'Hare. I might see a corpse being transported once a month, and maybe handle one once a year. Now, if you ever see the fire department and police lined up at a plane coming into a gate, not following the plane as if it was an emergency, chances are there is a fallen service member or someone notable that is being transported to their final resting place. Story 10. That few people lived past their 30s in the Middle Ages or some other ancient era. This misconception arises because of an automatic and incorrect assumption people make when they hear the statistic the average life expectancy was 35 in the Middle Ages. In reality, there have always been lots of people who lived to 70+ years old in all societies. The difference was that in the Middle Ages there were many childhood diseases that caused a much higher childhood mortality rate, which skews the numbers much lower. If you survived childhood, there was a very good chance that you would make it into your 60s plus. Like the commenter said, if you made it through childhood, chances were good you could live to be 60 or 70 years old. So don't believe the hype about people back in the day all dying before they hit 40. Story 11. That one side of your brain controls logic and calculations, etc., while the other, music, art, and language. However, certain things such as the ability to recognize objects, buildings, faces, and people are stored on certain sides of the brain. Highly recommend The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks if you are interested in this sort of neuropsychology. Story 12. A lot of people seem to think that Easter Island is a great environmental fable. A small island, almost the most remote place on Earth, cut down all of their trees to build giant head statues, resulting in the collapse of their society and extinction, except that native Easter Islanders didn't go extinct. They're still here. The collapse of their society was precipitated by slavers, who took most of the population, anybody who could read basically in the written language they had invented, to work on the west coast of South America. Also, a lot of those heads are full bodies that have sunk into the sandy soil. And the real problem with Easter Island vegetation wasn't that they cut all the trees. Rats were the problem. The tiny remote island has little biodiversity, and the rats were brought in by outsiders. The rats ate the young trees that grew, chewing the base and killing it. There were so many rats and no new trees could grow, at least I'm pretty sure. Story 13. Curing cancer isn't going to be a single eureka moment and bam, cancer is gone forever. There are tons of different types of cancers, with different genetics and epigenetics playing into how they develop. There seem to be people out there who think Big Pharma is sitting on some magical cure that they're holding out on because they want to sell treatments. To even suggest that there's one catch-all cure is so reductive of what cancer is. It's not really one disease. It's tons of different ailments with different symptoms that happen to share some commonalities in the way the cells divide and spread. I know we all want to believe that there's a magic bullet out there that'll cure cancer once and for all, but that's just not how it works. Cancer is a complicated beast with all sorts of different factors coming into play. Genetics, environment, you name it. There's not going to be a one-size-fits-all cure that'll work for every single case of cancer, but that doesn't mean we should give up hope. There are tons of smart people working every day to better understand cancer and develop new treatments, so let's keep supporting those efforts and doing our part to raise awareness about this disease. We can make a difference. Story 14. George Washington Carver didn't invent peanut butter. Sorry, Black History Month, it was a white Canadian bloke 50 years prior. Still, Carver did a lot of cool stuff with peanut cultivation. To add to this, Carver's work was so much more complex than merely inventing peanut butter, as great as peanut butter is. He worked hard to create and promote products and food recipes that involved peanuts and sweet potatoes because 1. Those were cheap, hence more readily available to poor farmers, and 2. They were better for the soil, which had been stripped of its nutrients in his home area by cotton farming. He wasn't just some guy who put peanuts on food. He was a professor, an agricultural scientist, and an environmentalist. Story 15. That we only use 10% of our brains. We use all of our brains. Source: I'm a neuroscientist, MD/PhD, who uses brain imaging techniques to study brain activity. I have no idea how this misconception got started. We know what behaviors almost all regions of the brains are involved in, although the specific details of each are the focus of much neuroscience research. There are literally no regions of the brain that are never used in a normal healthy brain. Corollary to this, we do not have right/left sides of our brain that are creative/math-oriented, respectively. The majority of our two brain hemispheres control identical functions for the opposite side of the body, i.e., right hemisphere motor center controls left-hand movement. There are a few regions that appear to be different between the hemispheres, and the differences in the lateralized roles of those regions is still not fully known. For example, language production regions were very controversial. For example, regions involved in attentional control. Telling kids to use their right brains in art class makes no real sense. Story 16. Many people believe that the Roman Empire ended in 476. In actuality, that date only marks the surrender of the city of Rome and the dissolution of the Western Roman Empire, which was far smaller than the eastern half, and in no way more legitimate as their sole heir to the legacy of Rome. Constantinople was still secure as the capital of the Eastern Empire, and had been the capital of a unified empire before the empire was split into eastern and western halves anyway. And in fact, at the date of 476, Rome itself was not even the capital of the Western Empire. Since the Renaissance, many historians have incorrectly referred to the Eastern Empire as the Byzantine Empire, but no citizen of that empire ever referred to themselves as anything other than Roman. The citizen of the former Western Empire also considered themselves Roman, and up until hundreds of years after the official fall of Rome, believed that their true government was in Constantinople and would shortly reconquer them to free them from their barbarian oppressors. This turned out to be true, as the Eastern Emperor Justinian did in fact take back all of North Africa and the entire peninsula of Italy. The point that all contemporaries considered the Eastern Empire to be well and truly the Roman Empire is further illustrated by the fact that when Sultan Mehmed II finally sacked Constantinople in 1453, he named the province the Sultanate of Rum, or Rome. That's 1,000 years after the traditional date of the fall of the Roman Empire that a foreign army considered themselves to have finally conquered Rome. Story 17. Scientists aren't super clean and organized people in lab coats with beakers full of colorful liquid. They're incredibly messy and unorganized people with notebooks full of scribbles and multiple beakers of clear, messily labeled liquid. Every single lab I've worked for is a mess, as is every single scientist I've met, myself included. Scientists also don't usually spend all day in labs like that. They are very often in their offices or in boardrooms writing reports, planning experiments, which are not necessarily in labs trying to make an appeal to the ethics board and the funding board for permission to conduct experiments, attending other conferences, reading reports from others such as peer review, interviewing test subjects in the case of when we test things on people, and so on. Outside of actual experimentation where safety gear such as lab coats are required, lab coats aren't really necessary anyway. And of those who are dealing with the beakers and colorful liquids, you are usually dealing only with chemistry, medicine, or biology. There are other scientists in observatories doing astronomy, for example. Story 18. Autism is a genetic disorder. Genetic disorders are created within us before we are born, while our DNA is still being made up. Vaccines don't change our genetics. Therefore, vaccines don't cause autism. My cousin is autistic, but his only superpower is keeping up with like 20 ongoing anime series at once. But then again, I used to do that too, and I'm not autistic, as far as I know. Story 19. A snake will not lay next to you to size you up to see if it can eat you. It will either strike at you or it will not. None of this pre-planning ahead nonsense. Also, very few snakes are even capable of consuming a human. I keep and breed snakes. The largest I have is about 9 feet in length, and all I hear when I tell people is how they know someone who had a snake that was sizing them up. This story is always followed by how they let the snake free roam, and it's unbelievably false. If a snake would ever lay next to you, it is to get warmth and nothing else, especially if it was kept in the proper habitat. Story 20. That anything labeled vegan or organic is automatically healthy and that you can eat as much as you want without worrying about the calories. Even those energy bars made by a brand rhyming with mind still have a lot of added sugar, and you'd probably be better off eating fruit or something less processed. Story 21. That all cats are aloof and unaffectionate. Some cats are like this, but there are many that are very friendly, loving, and have good floofs. I was a dog person until I got married. We now foster cats, and I found that the majority are very friendly and affectionate and act like dogs. We have one right now that loves to play fetch, greets us at the door, loves his belly rubbed, loves to lay on you, sleeps under the covers, and walks on a leash. If you adopt from a rescue group, you will be able to find a cat that acts how you want, because the foster knows which cat has what type of personality. I have a cat and she is a sweetheart. She used to be shy, but now she comes and sees everyone who visits and chills next to them. Loves to be pet, loves belly rubs, and will literally come over and rub you just for attention and affection. Has never scratched anyone since we adopted her 4 years ago. This misconception happens because a lot of people expect a cat to behave like a dog. And no, cats are not dogs and behave differently. Once you understand that, you'll start understanding your cat more too. Some are more cuddly while others are more independent. But that doesn't mean they don't love you. It is just different. Story 22. Doing CPR will save a life. It's not like the movies make it out to be. CPR without the use of an automated external defibrillator or AED has an incredibly slim chance of bringing a person back to sinus rhythm, especially if they don't have a shockable rhythm to begin with. Even if CPR without an AED manages to bring a patient back, there's a significant chance that they'll have a substantial decrease in quality of life. Story 23. Despite what people think, Albert Einstein never failed math. The confusion likely comes from the grading system, but has been used for a long time to give people hope. When he was shown a clipping from Ripley's Believe It or Not, where that myth originated, he responded, "I never failed mathematics. Before I was 15, I had mastered differential and integral calculus." Story 24. We do not mistake thirst for hunger. Our bodies are vastly complex mechanisms, and our hunger/thirst detection systems are very different. It's true that if you drink a pint of water when feeling hungry, it can satiate hunger for a while, but that's because the volume of water fills your stomach. As soon as that water's processed, you'll feel hungry again. It's also not true that you need 2 liters or 8 cups of water a day, especially not in addition to anything else you drink. The study this figure came from was back in the 40s, which recommended an average of human needs around 2 liters of water a day. However, most of that water intake will be from your food and regular drinks, tea, coffee, Coke, beer, whatever. There is no need to force yourself to drink an additional 2 liters of water every single day. Healthy pee is clear? No, it's not. Healthy pee is a pale yellow or straw color. If your pee is clear, it's just excess water being eliminated. There's really no need to freak out if your pee has even the slightest tinge of color to it. It doesn't mean you're horrendously dehydrated at all, because your body is pretty good at interpreting signals and letting you know if it needs something. Hungry? Eat something. Thirsty? Drink something. There's no need to follow relatively arbitrary rules and override what your body is telling you. As a human race, we've got pretty far without needing to set reminders to drink another cup of water. We don't need to do that nowadays either. Our bodies are super complex, and they have different systems to detect hunger and thirst. Just because drinking water can make you feel less hungry for a bit doesn't mean your body is confused between the two. When you're really thirsty, your mouth and throat might feel dry and you might have a headache or feel dizzy, none of which have anything to do with being hungry. And don't stress too much about drinking 8 cups of water a day. That rule is from the 40s, and it doesn't take into account that you get water from other sources like food and drinks other than water. So listen to your body and drink when you're thirsty, and eat when you're hungry. There's no need to force yourself to follow outdated guidelines. Story 25. Navy SEALs and other special forces may be the best warriors on the planet, but they are not experts in hand-to-hand combat. It takes years of intense, consistent training to reach the level of skill people attribute to SEALs, and a SEAL's time is very precious. Why in the hell would they waste thousands of hours of their invaluable training time cultivating a skill that they're unlikely to ever use? SEALs have guns and knives, and they work in teams. If they're ever caught in a situation where they're without any of these, they're most likely screwed with or without martial arts training. Professional fighters, on the other hand, spend all of their time learning how to incapacitate other skilled fighters with their bare hands. If you throw a SEAL into a cage with a professional fighter and force them to kill each other, the SEAL will die every time. No amount of dirty fighting will overcome the gap between them. Even if dirty fighting could give one an advantage, the professional fighter would be able to fight dirty as well, and they'd be much better at it than a SEAL, since they understand hand-to-hand combat on a much deeper level. Now stop pitting these two against each other in hypothetical fights as if the SEAL has a chance. They don't. It doesn't matter if it's in the ring or in the streets. So long as weapons aren't allowed, the professional fighter wins every time. Story 26. The chemicals in vaccines are harmless to your healthy child. You consume more mercury in a single bite of fish than is ever in a vaccine. People see these big scary chemicals but don't understand that most of them are bonded and their nature is changed. Like how sodium and chlorine are the 2 most reactive chemicals, but together they're just fucking table salt. There's so many bullshit reasons people are choosing not to vaccinate, and all of them are absolute BS. The only people vaccines are a danger to are people with compromised immune systems, immune disorders, cancer, etc. So many children are dying because of stupidity. They're not only killing their own children, but also others. Also, autism is a genetic disorder and vaccines definitely don't cause them. I don't know, an uncle of mine was pretty sure that Facebook meme he read about vaccines causing autism was factual. Story 27. A speech impediment isn't a mental disability, it's physical, and in some cases it's from being a recovering deaf individual, such as myself. Yes, we have a small lisp or can't pronounce shit the same as you. It doesn't mean we're idiots incapable of the most basic thoughts. So many people can't get it through their head that any disability does not always equal mental, or it's simply people look for the smallest handicap in others so that they can tear it down and lift themselves up as superior. It's genuinely quite frustrating, and the mocking on a near daily basis is inebriating. Getting anyone to actually respect or listen to me without treating me like I'm a toddler grows so old most of the time I just keep my mouth shut now. Also, I do not expect some of you or a lot of you to consider this a misconception, as it's something you have to personally experience. But for my best example, if I said, "Who is Mike Tyson?" I would bet money the first thing you'd say is the guy with the funny lisp. In fact, I've even done personal studies of this, and that's mostly what people first say. It isn't his accomplishments, but his flaw of having a lisp. Yes, it isn't saying he's mentally inclined as my statement was directed to, but the fact that more often than not he's known for his lisp instead of his outstanding boxing achievements, I hope shows what I mean. I have had similar conversations with some people, and I find that they discuss accomplishments first, but use a flaw to be more specific. Like, "Who is Mike Tyson?" would be responded to with, "The famous boxer." You know, the one with the lisp? I think it really depends on the types of people that you surround yourself with. Story 28. Daddy longlegs are not spiders. The actual name for them outside of their scientific name is the harvestman bug. They are arachnids, but they have different eyes, different mouths, and don't usually eat live prey. They eat mostly decomposing plant matter and dead bugs. They're really good for the environment, and don't really have strong enough jaws to bite humans. Oh, and their legs don't grow back. Please don't pull their legs off. This is actually my favorite common misconception too, because only in certain parts of the world do they call what you're referring to the daddy longlegs. As you said, it is an arachnid, but not a spider. Other names for it include the huntsman bug, like you mentioned, the harvestman, or occasionally shepherd spiders. In Australia, what we call the daddy longlegs is an actual spider, also known as the cellar spider, and interestingly enough, I believe it's in the UK that crane flies, not even arachnids but insects of the order Diptera, also get called by the name of daddy longlegs. It's funny to me that all three of these species have the same myth tied to them, that they're incredibly venomous but their fangs are too short to bite people. I don't believe that holds true for any of the daddy longlegs. Story 29. Introversion and extroversion have nothing to do with how social a person is. It only tells you something about how social activity affects them. That is to say, an introvert isn't necessarily shy and quiet, and an extrovert isn't necessarily loud and forward. You can be a very social, very charismatic introvert who simply needs ample time to retreat and recharge after a social event. And you can be a shy or socially awkward extrovert who still has a need to be regularly social and doesn't like to be alone for too long. Also, they are not fixed states. An introvert can become an extrovert over time or due to lived experiences and vice versa. Thanks for watching to the end. If you have a similar story to share, please leave it in the comments below. At some point, I'd love to make a video on them in the future. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video you just watched. For more videos like this one, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.